Howdy, hero! Cosmo the Magician here, and welcome to my series, A Few of My Favorite Builds, where I present various builds to help you get through your Diablo 3 season journey in a fun and easy manner. In this episode, just in time for Season 21, we'll be looking at the Wave of Light build for the Monk using the Monkey King's Garb, also known as the Sunwuko set, or to shorten things, I call it the Sun Monk. Unlike your average monk in any RPG, who is usually a melee character of what I usually call the fist, kicks, or sticks variety, the Sun Monk totally trashes that whole stereotype. Instead, the Sun Monk uses a ranged version of the Wave of Light to do ranged area of effect damage. In other words, she's going to stand back from a distance and blast everything. So let's take her into a Greater Rift 75 just to see her in action. Of course, like any build, she does have some preparatory work she needs to do. Really complicated here. Just activate Sweeping Winds. There we go. Once our Sweeping Winds are up to 13 stacks, she's good to go. From this point on, it's just blast away with Wave of Light from a distance. You pretty much have, if it's on the screen, actually if it's beyond your screen, you can still kill it. Other than Wave of Light, the only other thing to keep in mind is if you do need some mobility, if something's doing some range on you or you just need to jump, we do have 3 charges of Dashing Strike.
What you ask is impossible.
That is pretty much it. Let's now take a look at her gear. As I mentioned earlier, the heart of this build is the Monkey King's Garb, also known as the Sunwuko set. We will only be using 5 out of 6 pieces of this set since we require a different headpiece, which means of course we have to be wearing the Ring of Royal Grandeur or have that in Kanai's Cube. So let's look at what the bonuses from the set are. The 2-piece bonus gives us a 50% damage reduction whenever Sweeping Winds is active. And since we will constantly have Sweeping Winds active, that means we will always have 50% damage reduction. The 4-piece bonus causes a decoy to appear next to the last enemy you hit that not only taunts nearby enemies, but then explodes for 1000% damage for each stack of Sweeping Winds that you have. Keep in mind that's 1000 per each stack. We'll get to those stacks in a moment. The 6-piece bonus gives us a 1500% damage bonus for each stack of Sweeping Winds for a Wave of Light or also Lashing Tail Kick or Tempest Rush. But we're only concerned about Wave of Light. Those stacks of Sweeping Wind are caused by 2 pieces of our gear. Number 1, Kiyoshiro's Soul, our belt, causes us to gain 2 stacks of Sweeping Wind every second that we do not deal any damage to enemies. So basically, we'll constantly be generating stacks of wind if we're not doing anything, so we never lose them. But more importantly, in our offhand we have the Vengeful Wind, which increases the maximum stack count of Sweeping Wind by 10. That means we will have 13 stacks of Sweeping Wind at all times. All I have to do is activate Sweeping Wind, wait a few seconds, and we have 13 stacks. The headpiece we want for this build is So Krin's Gaze, which besides giving us an increase of Wave of Light damage by 125%, it also turns our Wave of Light into the range attack. Normally Wave of Light will be centered on you. This allows us to cast it from a distance, which really is the sweet part about this build. On our feet, we're going to be wearing the Crudest Boots, which gives us 2 spirit allies instead of just 1. And each of our spirit allies gives us more damage and also increases our spirit regeneration, which makes it easier to spam the heck out of that Wave of Light without having to worry about spirit generation. On our wrist, we're wearing Pinto's Pride, which slows enemies hit by our Wave of Light and increases its damage. That slowing is important. We'll get to that in a moment when we talk about our gems. Both our monk and her follower, the enchantress, are wearing Unity, which splits all damage between them. And since our follower is equipped with an immortality token, meaning she can't die, she can basically act as a damage absorption shield. On her other finger, we're going to be wearing Convection of Elements, which gives us a nice burst damage. And now let's look at her gems. First of all of her gear is going to be socketed with emeralds, except for the headpiece, which we're going to want a topaz for our resource cost reduction. And since this is a range attack build, the first legendary gem we're going to want is Zeiss Stone of Vengeance, which increases the damage dealt based on how far away the enemy is. The next legendary gem we're going to want is either Bane of Stricken or Bane of Powerful. It's really a coin toss. One does more damage based on the number of times you hit anything. The other just basically does more damage against bosses. My personal preference is Bane of Stricken. As they say, your mileage may vary. And finally, the last legendary gem we're going to be using is Bane of Trapped. Since Pinto's Pride is going to slow enemies whenever we hit them with our Wave of Light, Bane of Trapped is going to do extra damage whenever they're slowed. And finally, let's look at Kanaya's Cube. As I mentioned back in the beginning, we must have Ring of Royal Grandeur in the cube so that we can get the full advantage of our Monkey King's Garb, even though we're only wearing 5 pieces. In the armor slot, we have Nemesis Bracers, causing those pylons and shrines to spawn elites, making our runs a lot faster. And finally, in the weapon slot, we're going to have Incense Torch of the Grand Temple, which not only reduces the spirit cost of Wave of Light by 50%, again letting us spam the heck out of it, it also increases its damage output by another 550%. The final thing we want to talk about with our gear is enchanting at the Mystic. Our first focus is going to be getting as much resource cost reduction as possible. I'm currently at about 43%, and you'll notice that several of my pieces here have reduced all resource costs. If they don't have that, then I'm generally adding Wave of Light damage, or if we can't add that, then we're going to be adding Fire Skill damage, since our Wave of Light is fire-based. So basically everything's going to be either resource cost reduction, or it's going to be Wave of Light. Some of my pieces here aren't even enchanted. Your mileage may vary, as they say. But that should be your general focus. Get as much resource cost reduction so that you're not having to worry about generators, since this is a range attack build. You don't want to have to be getting up and punching things in the face to generate your spirit. Once you have a decent enough amount of resource cost reduction, add Wave of Light damage or fire damage. And finally, let's take a look at her skill set. Her primary attack really isn't going to matter much at this point because we have enough resource cost reduction where we don't need to use a generator. While leveling though, you'll want to pick something that fits your particular playstyle. Of course, our most important thing is our Wave of Light. And we are going to be using the Explosive Light rune to turn it into fire and to make it 830% more damage. Of course, next up, we're going to need Sweeping Wind, which we've covered extensively. And the rune for that we're going to use is Inner Storm, which increases our spirit generation as long as we have at least 3 stacks. Since we're constantly having Sweeping Wind up, that means more spirit generation again, so we don't have to worry about using a generator. Next up is our Mystic Ally, and we're going to be using Air Ally again for spirit regeneration as a passive, or when we absolutely need it, which will be very rarely, we can activate it for an extra 100 spirit. And finally is Mantra of Salvation, which passively gives us an extra 20% resistance to all elements, and with the Agility rune gives us an extra dodge chance. And finally, let's look at our passives. I'm using Fleet-Footed to give us 10% movement speed. Exalted Soul, again we want spirit regeneration and extra spirit. Sixth Sense is giving us 25% on all of our elemental resistances, anything non-physical. And of course, Guardian of the Path gives us a 35% chance to dodge incoming attacks while dual wielding. So there you have it, folks. One of my all-time favorite builds, the Sun Monk. I hope you found this video entertaining and informative. Please hit the like button below. Comments are always welcome. Any suggestions, any comments, let me know. I also hope that if you watched any of my previous videos, you'll notice the quality of this one is much better because I just got a much better laptop. Thanks again, everybody. Have fun. Stay safe. Enjoy Season 21.